Today, after getting chewed out by my boss and working late, I dragged my exhausted body back to the apartment Ethan and I shared. The moment I opened the door, Ethan, sitting straight at his desk, said without changing his expression, "Change your slippers, take a shower." I took a deep breath. Having just been ripped into by my boss, maybe I was just worked up, but tears of frustration started falling. I didn't change my slippers. Instead, I threw my bag carelessly and flopped onto the couch. "Ethan, let's break up." Ethan didn't even look up, completely ignoring my words. "Looks like the couch cover needs to be thrown out tomorrow, and the floor needs mopping too." Gritting my teeth, I repeated each word clearly. "Ethan, we're breaking up." This was the 6th time in 6 months I'd suggested breaking up. I admit I liked Ethan and didn't want to leave him, but I just couldn't take it anymore. It wasn't just because he had germophobia, but because he had germophobia towards me. We'd been together for a year, and I could count the times we'd held hands on one finger, just once. Kissing, hugging, all the things couples should do, we'd never done any of it. All because Ethan was a particularly clean person, someone who would go home and wash his hands 3 times even after shaking a friend's hand. What was worse was that we'd been living together for 2 months, and we slept in separate rooms. I wasn't allowed in his room, and the first things I had to do when I got home were change my slippers and shower. Even using the toilet required a thorough cleaning with toilet cleaner first, and then the same routine afterward. One time I was lazy and just flushed with water. The next day, Ethan replaced the entire toilet. My pathetic life, my pathetic self. I knew perfectly well that Ethan didn't love me. I wasn't special, and I wouldn't be special in the future either. Ethan finally looked up at me. Those captivating eyes glanced slightly in my direction. I couldn't read the emotion in his eyes, only a profound calmness. He said, "Are you sure?" My heart suddenly hitched. The last time I broke up with him, Ethan had asked the same thing. Back then, I'd ended up being weak-willed and caving in. How could you give up on someone you liked so easily? But this time I wasn't going to compromise. If he didn't love me, why did he accept my confession in the first place? If he didn't want to touch me, why did he agree to live with me? I didn't want to live like this for another second. Being with Ethan, I felt like a stranger, walking on eggshells for a whole year. I wanted to come home and do nothing, just lie on the couch scrolling on my phone, instead of changing slippers, showering, and constantly worrying about dirtying his space. I wiped away a tear and sat up. "I'm sure. I'll pack my bags and move out in a bit." Ethan frowned, giving me a deep look, but ultimately said nothing to make me stay. "Okay. Do you want me to call you a car?" I clutched my chest, took a deep breath, and muttered to myself, "Don't be angry, don't be angry, don't argue with an idiot." I got up, went back to the room, and angrily packed my luggage, ready to leave, looking every bit like I was running away from home. But at the door, the more I thought about it, the more resentful I felt. Why should I be so miserable while Ethan could remain completely unmoved? No way. I had to make him feel some pain too. I couldn't bear this suffering alone. So I dropped my luggage and marched furiously towards Ethan at his desk. Ethan uncharacteristically showed a hint of confusion. "Riley Lou, what are you doing?" But I wasn't about to explain. I made a bold move, grabbed Ethan's tie, and kissed him. Then, for revenge, I bit his lip. Not only that, I reached out and felt all over his muscular chest. Without giving Ethan a chance to react, I took off running, pulling my luggage with me. Behind me, I heard Ethan roar, "Riley Lou, are you crazy?" That was our first kiss, and our last. News of my breakup with Ethan spread quickly. After moving out of his place, I met with the manager from the company that had tried to poach me before. They were a large corporation but had ongoing collaborations with overseas companies. After discussing salary and benefits, I didn't hesitate to buy a plane ticket and fly out of that city that had caused me so much heartache. Within a week of starting at the new company, my excellent previous performance earned me the opportunity for training and further study abroad. I admit I wanted to escape. I didn't want to see Ethan anymore, because I was afraid I'd soften again. Sitting on the plane flying overseas, I looked at the few, non-intimate photos of Ethan and me in my phone's photo album. Tears started streaming down again. Then I reached out and deleted them all. "Ethan, I'll make you regret not cherishing me." Crying, I became afraid of smearing my expensive makeup. So I picked up the mirror I had with me and wiped away my tears. After 6 months of further study, I returned to the new company and worked hard for my boss. Gradually, my longing for Ethan lessened considerably. Perhaps, that's the power of time. I leisurely made myself a cup of coffee. Footsteps sounded behind me. I didn't turn around, but the man behind me called out, "Riley Liu, still working late?" I turned to look at the person. It was David Chen, a new colleague in our department, also very hardworking. Compared to me back then, he was even more so. When he first arrived, I even teased him, "Did you get dumped too?" He replied, "Yeah." Perhaps because we were in the same boat, we quickly became close, like really close friends. Sometimes when we traveled for work, we'd stick together, closer than really close friends. I took a sip of my coffee. "Isn't it obvious?" David laughed. "You better be careful you don't end up with a bald spot." I rolled my eyes at him irritably. "You always say something rude." After a while, David said, "There's a party tomorrow night, could you do me a favor?" I replied straightforwardly, "No." Ding dong, text message alert, David Chen transferred $700 to you. I gladly accepted it, then looked up at him. "I take back what I just said. Tell me, what's the favor? As long as I can do it, I'll go to the ends of the earth to get it done for you." David had a smug expression. "Pretend to be my girlfriend." Shamelessly, I said, "Add another $150. David twitched his lips. "It's a deal." The next evening, I wore a hot, form-fitting red dress and went with David to the party venue. Although I wouldn't say my figure was particularly great, it was certainly above average, and my face wasn't bad either. David was definitely going to make him look good. David enthusiastically greeted his friends and then introduced me to them. Acting professionally, I linked my arm with David's, looking completely inseparable. When the crowd thinned out a bit, my peripheral vision paused, and my smile froze. For no other reason than I saw an incredibly familiar figure, a person I had tried to escape for 2 years but hadn't forgotten. My gaze followed that man, step by step, as he walked over. Ethan Walker. Someone I'd recognize anywhere. When David saw Ethan arrive, he immediately perked up. "Dr. Walker, you made it. We've been waiting for you. This is my girlfriend, Riley Liu." I awkwardly twitched my lips. Ethan's eyes remained fixed on me. Then I heard his deep voice. "Riley Liu? Your girlfriend?" As soon as he said that, I suddenly felt the air grow cold. It must have been my imagination. I swallowed. "Riley Liu, what are you scared of? You've already broken up. There's nothing between you anymore." After a moment of self-reassurance, I composed myself, then put on a smile, extended my hand, and said, "Hello, Dr. Walker." Ethan held his wine glass and was slow to extend his hand. I knew he wouldn't. How could someone with severe germophobia, who went home and washed his hands 3 times after shaking hands with friends, shake hands with me, especially me, his awful ex-girlfriend? I still remembered, after I made a bold move, Ethan's face was filled with shock. His neat white shirt was all messed up by me, and there were even dots of blood on his lips from where I bit him. It was like a reserved heartthrob had been defiled. Thinking about it still gave me a little thrill. Seeing Ethan staring at me but not extending his hand, David, trying to ease the awkwardness, reached out to pull my hand back. But the next second, Ethan reached out and took it. "Hello, Riley Liu." I almost thought Ethan was going to say, "Long time no see, my awful ex-girlfriend." What shocked me even more was that Ethan actually shook my hand. Could it be that after 2 years, this man had turned over a new leaf? I gave a hesitant, uncertain chuckle, then quickly pulled my hand back and relinked my arm with David's. David laughed heartily. "Wow, I can't believe Dr. Walker, who's always had germophobia, is actually willing to shake hands. A year makes a big difference. At least you're acting like a normal person now." Seeming to realize he'd said something inappropriate, David quickly added awkwardly, "No, no, no, that's not what I meant, ha ha ha." Ethan didn't take offense, didn't even look at him, but glanced at me and said, "It's fine, you're quite right." Me, ha ha. I couldn't believe it. Ethan didn't stay long and turned to leave after a brief chat. My curiosity was piqued. When we were alone, I pulled David aside and whispered, "How do you know this Dr. Walker? Why haven't I heard you mention him as a friend before?" David said, About a year ago, I was in a car accident near his hospital and ended up in the ER. He was disgusted with me because my accident wounds had oil on them, my clothes were covered in sand, and I smelled sweaty. I swear, I was unconscious but he managed to piss me off enough to wake up. Later, I found out he had severe germophobia and thought it was pretty interesting. It took a lot of effort to win him over and become friends. I almost couldn't hold back my laughter. I asked again, "Then why would he come all the way here for your party? Isn't he really busy?" David looked at me intently. "How do you know he's really busy?" I was momentarily speechless, then changed tack. "Aren't all doctors like that?" You never know when there might be an emergency patient. Saying this brought back the painful history. After I confessed my feelings and we got together, Ethan was busy every day, so busy that I might not even exchange a few words with him all day. Most of the time, I just curled up on the couch watching TV by myself. My boyfriend was just a placeholder. And despite that, I gritted my teeth and stayed with Ethan for a year. I really admired myself for that. David seemed no longer suspicious and said, "True. But he's been here on a business trip for the past few days. I heard it's about a transfer. The state medical center has asked him several times, but I doubt Ethan will develop his career here." My heart skipped a beat. Transfer? Develop his career here? Was this going to be the death of me? I'd gone to such lengths to escape that city because it was painful being there with him. Now Ethan might have a chance to work here? But if they'd asked him several times and he hadn't come, it was probably unlikely. Thinking this, my heart returned to my chest. David leaned closer mysteriously. "What? Are you interested in him?" I rolled my eyes at him. "Would you be interested in someone who's not exactly normal?" David thought about it and found it quite reasonable. "Yeah, I guess anyone interested in Ethan must be a bit like him, with some germophobia issues of their own." Me? Question mark. I felt like I'd just been insulted. David was called away by other friends for drinking and chatting. I wasn't really suited for that kind of scene. I'd had a bit too much to drink anyway and wanted to use the restroom, but as soon as I stepped out of the ballroom, I saw a figure by the railing, dressed in a suit. Yet in my mind's eye, I could see him in a white coat, saving lives, performing surgery with his beautiful, long fingers while still being disgusted by how dirty the patient was here and there. I suddenly couldn't help but laugh, then quietly tiptoed away, planning to slip out. I just didn't know how to face Ethan. But after only 2 steps, a familiar voice called out to me, "Riley Lou, where are you planning to run off to this time?" Just my luck, even drinking cold water would get stuck in my teeth when things were going badly. I took a deep breath, then calmly turned around. "Oh, isn't this Dr. Walker? I don't think we're very close. Where I go is none of your business, is it?" Ethan narrowed his eyes and walked towards me, radiating intensity. I felt the pressure. "Not very close? Can't I show some concern for my ex-girlfriend?" Concern. That word came out of Ethan's mouth. I thought he was incapable of caring about anyone. I gave an awkward smile. "Dr. Walker, you seem to have forgotten. We've already broken up." Ethan was tall, a good head and a half taller than me. My eyes only reached his chest. Seeing his chest reminded me of the scene 2 years ago when I made a bold move. He was wearing a suit today too, with a white shirt underneath and a neat and tidy tie, exuding a reserved aura. I screamed inwardly, "Riley Lou, I knew you weren't some non-normal person. You definitely chased Ethan because you were attracted to his good looks. Are you David Chen's girlfriend?" I was stunned. I couldn't believe Ethan would ask such a ridiculous question. And hadn't I just been introduced to him as such? "Yes. Break up with him. You're not allowed to see him again." I looked up at him in surprise. It was still those captivating eyes, but this time, they weren't calm, not completely unruffled. There was annoyance, even anger. I was furious. "Are you sick? Go see a doctor." With that, I didn't intend to stay and argue. I turned to leave, but the next second, Ethan grabbed my wrist. A strong pull brought me into his embrace. Ethan's low voice sounded in my ear. "Riley Lou, 2 years, you've really grown bold." Then, after saying that, he actually took the initiative to kiss my earlobe, then gently bit it. My mind immediately exploded. Ethan must be crazy today. Not only did he hug me on his own, but he also kissed me. "Ethan, let go of me. What do you think you're doing? I'll sue you for assaulting a married woman." My forehead twitched twice, then I coughed. "I told you I have a boyfriend." Ethan suddenly laughed. "Boyfriend?" David Chen already came clean. He said you scammed him out of $6,000. Me. Just then, another familiar voice called out to me. "Riley." David walked out from inside, closing the door behind him. "You guys know each other, right?" There was no way to hide it now. I had to admit it. Yeah. He's my not-so-normal ex-boyfriend." I expected David to be incredibly nosy and ask about our history, but instead, he just looked at Ethan with some hostility, then said, "Was he bothering you just now?" I nodded vigorously. Ethan's captivating eyes narrowed, looking very angry. David pulled me towards him and said to Ethan, "Even though I consider you a friend, Ethan, if you didn't try to stop Riley 2 years ago, why are you bothering her now?" That made perfect sense, but when I looked up and saw the flicker of disappointment in Ethan's eyes, my heart tightened involuntarily. Then, David pulled me away in front of Then, we didn't go back to the party but got directly into his car. I was lost in thought the whole way until David spoke, bringing me back to reality. Riley, do you still like Ethan? For some reason, I heard the carefulness in David's tone. I paused, saying nothing. I couldn't answer. The car was quiet. Finally, I heard David give a bitter laugh and say casually, I get it. Anyway, thanks for pretending to be my girlfriend today. From now on, you won't be able to scam money from me anymore. I'll take you home. I wasn't some naive girl experiencing first love. Of course, I understood David's subtle feelings. So I said, I'm sorry. Don't bother. I'll take a taxi back myself. My tone was polite and distant. David watched me get out of the passenger seat but didn't stop me. The car remained parked in front of me for about a minute before finally driving away. I took a taxi all the way home and sat on the couch in a daze for a long time. After 2 years, I thought I had moved on long ago, but the moment I saw Ethan, the high wall I had painstakingly built in my heart crumbled. Unimaginably fragile. The more I thought about it, the sadder I became. Finally, I turned my sadness into appetite, tearfully ordering barbecue and fried chicken. I'd only had drinks at the party earlier, so it was no wonder I was hungry now. Turns out, I ate myself into the hospital in the middle of the night. The diagnosis was gastritis. It suddenly hit me that the past 2 years living alone had been really comfortable. I could come home and do nothing, lie on the couch scrolling on my phone, order takeout when I was hungry, and drink whatever I wanted when I was thirsty. It had probably taken a toll on my stomach. Half asleep, I suddenly remembered the year I was with Ethan. Although he demanded perfection from me regarding my own habits, he would also knock on my door every day to call me for meals. He cooked the meals himself, but every time we ate, he would criticize me, like, you dropped a grain of rice, can you use the serving utensils to pick up food, try not to spill the soup. It seemed his germophobia was always the most prominent thing about him, so prominent it made you forget everything else. Just my luck, I ended up in the state medical center, and just my luck, I saw Ethan's familiar face. It was the first time I'd seen him look flustered. Behind him was a group of doctors in white coats. Then he pushed me away. I became his patient. Enduring the sharp pain in my stomach, I asked, you're not a doctor here, why are you in charge? Ethan said without changing his expression, I will be, soon. My heart turned to ash. I didn't say anything more. Just then, Ethan lifted his hand, wearing a medical glove, and wiped my mouth with his finger. I had a bad feeling. Sure enough, Ethan raised an eyebrow. Fried chicken? Or barbecue? Shut up. A nurse beside me comforted me and said, don't worry, you might need a gastroscopy. Do you want a direct tube or general anesthesia? General anesthesia requires consent from family/guardian. I was shocked. I wasn't afraid of anything, but I was terrified of needles and surgeries. Just thinking about seeing others get a gastroscopy, that thick tube going straight down their throat, terrified me. General anesthesia, I want general anesthesia. The nurse nodded. Okay, where is your family member? It suddenly occurred to me that I was an orphan. My parents had passed away in a car accident when I was in my senior year of high school. I'd gotten through college relying on that small amount of compensation and scholarships. Where in the world was my family member? Ethan glanced at me, then turned to the nurse and said, go get the consent form. I'm her family member. I'll sign. I gave Ethan a weird look, but the severe pain in my abdomen made me unable to speak. After one shot of anesthesia, I was unconscious. WHE. And I woke up, I was lying in a hospital room. A nurse was checking my for. I swallowed my dry throat and asked, Nurse, where's Dr. Walker? That nurse was the one who gave me the anesthesia. She looked down at me. Dr. Walker went back to his hospital. He'll be starting here in 2 days. My eyes felt hazy. He agreed to the transfer? The nurse stifled a laugh and nodded. Yes, well, his family member is here, how could he not transfer? I twitched my lips, denying it. I'm not his family member. The nurse looked disbelieving. Then last night. Me, can you expect someone who's not exactly normal to say normal things? Nurse. Lying in bed, after the anesthesia wore off, I suddenly remembered I had to work today. I fumbled to open my phone, looking at the time displayed. 10:30 in the morning. I slumped back down, unlocked my phone, and was about to explain to the manager. But as soon as I opened it, several messages dinged in. It was the manager's chat window. 3 messages had been sent at 9 a.m. Hey Riley, when did you get married? Kept that quiet. Feeling unwell? I've given you a week off. Remember to report back on time next week, or you'll lose your bonus. Scrolling up, I saw a clear record of someone using my phone to make dozens of calls in the middle of the night yesterday. The last call connected for over 2 minutes. I could tell exactly who did it without even thinking. And I could guess what Ethan said. In the afternoon, I snuck back home with the medicine the hospital gave me, vowing to eat healthy from now on, 3 meals a day on time. I made a silent plan in my head, then immediately failed the moment I got home, curling up on the couch, drinking takeout congee, and binge-watching a show. When I was bored, I scrolled on my phone. In the workgroup chat, someone had resigned. It was David Chin. Immediately after, David sent me a message. I'm leaving, Riley. I hope you and Dr. Walker find happiness. I sighed. I had lost a close friend just like that. But thinking about it carefully, I didn't feel anything for David at all. Not even when we linked arms intimately or when he stood behind me, shielding me, or held my hand getting into the car. My heart remained calm, a stark contrast to how I felt with Ethan. Annoyed, I wondered if I should jump ship again? Just jump ship and go abroad, so I'd never see Ethan again. I sent David a good luck message, but it didn't go through. A bright red exclamation mark appeared clearly on the screen. A year of knowing each other turned to nothing in that moment. Sometimes I thought, if only I could be like David, able to turn around and leave cleanly, without any lingering feelings. A ding brought me back to reality. A familiar doctor avatar in a white coat, holding a syringe, sent a message. Open the door. I remembered I had blocked and deleted all of Ethan's contact information 2 years ago. How did this guy suddenly show up again? He must have unblocked himself using my phone last night. Furious, I replied with a question mark. Ethan sent another message. Open the door, Riley. Just those simple 4 words. I couldn't even bring myself to type out a refusal. Before, Ethan either wouldn't call me by name or only used my full name. This was the first time he had called me Riley. I also remembered last night at the party, when he held me and whispered in my ear, annoyance in his voice, Riley Lou, 2 years later, you've really grown bold. Then several more messages came through. I brought a lot of stuff. I saved your life last night, after all. You wouldn't be that heartless, would you? A ploy. It was definitely a ploy. Being the grateful person I am, I still couldn't resist opening the door. But aside from a bag of groceries and a black plastic bag in his hand, he had nothing else. I folded my arms and looked at him. Is this what you meant by a lot of stuff? Ethan didn't speak but kept looking behind me. I curiously turned around, and my face flushed red. Because my place was incredibly messy, like a pigsty. Although there wasn't much trash, it was a far cry from Ethan's place. Then I suppressed my shame and annoyance and glared at him. What are you looking at? Oh, I forgot, Dr. Walker is severely germophobic. You probably don't want to come into my place. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. Then I reached out to close the door, but Ethan's beautiful hand blocked it. His tone was unexpectedly softer. It's fine, it's acceptable. That sounded pretty forced. Ethan took out a pair of men's slippers from the black plastic bag behind the groceries, put them on, and stepped inside, closing the door behind him. I quietly said, Ethan, 2 years later, you really have become normal? Ethan didn't look at me. He went to the kitchen and washed his hands 3 times before doing anything else. I suddenly realized I had asked a meaningless question. Riley Lou, I thought you'd be doing well after leaving me. Turns out that's not the case. I sat on the couch. You came here just to scold me? Ethan walked over, wiping his hands. No. You forgot what I told you yesterday? I said, let's get back together. Thinking back to the year I was with Ethan, I felt a pang of sadness. Ethan, do you know what you're saying? Do you think I'd still be the same person who loved you so much I could stand you treating me like a stranger for a year? There was a moment of silence. Ethan suddenly said, but, you assaulted me when you ran off. You have to take responsibility. The heavy atmosphere was completely broken by his words. I actually found it a little childish and funny. It was just a bite and a touch, right? Was it that big of a deal? He still remembered it now. I turned my head away, not wanting to talk to him. Ethan walked over and forcibly turned my face to look at him. Riley Lou, I'm sorry. He said earnestly and sincerely, you were my first girlfriend. When you confessed your feelings, I saw the hopeful look on your face and didn't refuse, because I didn't dislike you. I hadn't had close contact with many people growing up. I didn't touch you partly because I honestly didn't know how to. I had never taken the initiative to get close to anyone. The other part is, we weren't married yet. Geez, so holding hands, hugging, and kissing had to wait until we were married? Ethan looked into my eyes and smiled. Riley Lou, Do you remember the first time you held my hand? Memories flooded my mind. I remembered. I'd remember that day until I died. A year after graduating college, I met Ethan. I chased him for a long time and finally, with flowers in hand and my heart pounding, I seriously confessed my feelings. Back then, I was so afraid Ethan would reject me. But he didn't. He agreed. Happily, I tentatively took his hand, but before it even felt warm, he pulled away and said, Did you wash your hands? I could just die. Maybe it was the intense enthusiasm, wounded by his pulling away. I felt terrible inside, lowering my head, feeling like he was disgusted with me. Thinking back now, he was even stuttering a little when he spoke. Actually, if you had looked up, you would have seen me blushing. I wasn't disgusted with you then, I just didn't know what to do. I instinctively used common phrases to cover it up. Later, I kept thinking, if you had just taken the initiative one more time, maybe I really wouldn't have been able to refuse. For a moment, I was startled, and my face felt a little warm. I quickly said, Why are you telling me all this? That was years ago. Ethan let go of my face and said casually, If you don't want to hear it, that's fine. But I was definitely wrong back then. Now, let me take the initiative. I sat on the couch, replaying his words, and felt a sense of relief and happiness. I never expected to hear these things from Ethan. I couldn't understand it. Especially couldn't understand it. So I asked, How did you suddenly have this change of heart? Ethan's deep eyes stared at me. After you assaulted me. Me. Facts proved that a leopard can't change its spots. I watched as Ethan's forehead was furrowed, and then he put on gloves and cleaned my place spotlessly clean. He even made a meal, just like when we lived together before. I had always known that Ethan was actually a very diligent person. Maybe it was his germophobia that didn't allow any dirt or mess in his home. He was frighteningly disciplined, while I was someone without germophobia and very undisciplined. I silently cried inside, then moved my legs and weakly sat down at the appetizing dining table. Just as I was about to pick up my chopsticks, a cup of warm water suddenly appeared next to my hand, followed by an open palm with 4 pills resting on it. Ethan frowned. Take your medicine before you eat. My heart pounded twice. Then I picked up the 4 pills and swallowed them with the water. I ate while watching his expression, afraid he would open his mouth again and say, You dropped a grain of rice, can you use the serving utensils to pick up food, try not to spill the soup. But he didn't. He just ate silently. I believed that Ethan had truly changed a lot, at least towards me. Halfway through the meal, Ethan said, Don't eat takeout anymore. It's bad for your stomach. I gave a long suppressing the smile that was about to appear on my lips. But I don't know how to cook. Leave it. I'll do it. Ethan got a call and left in a hurry. I watched him go from the doorway. Ding ding ding, I picked up the phone. A woman's voice came from the other end. Riley, dear, I think I just saw Gary Miller, the man who hit your parents back then. He was dressed quite respectably, wearing an expensive watch. He certainly didn't look like he was short on money. My body trembled. The sealed memories were like a switch flipped open, flooding out like a torrent. After my parents were killed in the accident, the court ordered $150,000 compensation, but the driver couldn't afford to pay. The confiscated assets were minimal. I had to get through college on that meager compensation and scholarship. I remembered Gary Miller back then, drunk, showing no remorse. I was just drunk, it wasn't intentional. What good is it to yell at me? I can't pay anyway. If I have to go to jail, I'll go to jail. My eyes turned red. I almost grabbed a kitchen knife and stabbed that wicked man to death. I screamed and cried, demanding he apologize, demanding he kneel and repent at my parents' memorial site. He apologized, and he knelt, but his face showed no repentance. Later, he was taken away by the police and sentenced to 6 years and 4 months. That was the maximum sentence I could get for my parents because the man hadn't fled the scene, but he showed no sign of remorse. I gripped my phone tightly. I almost forgot. 6 years, it's gone by so fast. Aunt Susan, thank you for telling me. I wiped away a tear and hung up. Then I called the police to inquire about the situation. If someone has the ability to pay but refuses, you can file a lawsuit with the court for forced enforcement. But I was already in another city. Going back to file the lawsuit would take a long time and effort. So I decided to negotiate privately first, hoping that person had some conscience. The next day, I bought a plane ticket. Sitting in the departure lounge, Ethan sent me a message. Where are you going? Felt a lump in my throat. Tears streamed down unexpectedly. After my parents passed away, Ethan was the only one who had given me warmth. I remembered when I first met him. I didn't want to go back to my cold, empty apartment and froze outside all night, ending up in the hospital he worked at. Later, he gave me a clean handkerchief, told me to wipe my tears in disgust, and then examined me. Perhaps in our most vulnerable moments, we develop different kinds of feelings. Back then, Ethan was like a ray of light for me, even if it was just an unintentional gesture he didn't think much of. He said, "Go get the consent form. I am her family member. I'll sign." I hadn't heard the word family member in a long time, but he said he was my family member. Perhaps, no matter how much time passed, no matter how he treated me, I would fall for him completely. In that moment, thinking of my parents' faces, I helplessly told him everything that had happened. His call came through. I wiped the tears from my phone screen. "Hello." Ethan's deep voice came from the phone. "Don't be scared. Send me your address. Wait for me." I sent him the address. Before long, Ethan sent me a screenshot, a plane ticket for the next flight. The call didn't end. I leaned back in my seat, saying nothing. I could hear the sounds of traffic on Ethan's end until my name was called. "Ethan, I have to board. I'll hang up." His breathing sounded a little heavy on the other end. "Okay." I put my phone on airplane mode. I never procrastinated when it came to important matters. I quickly arrived near the home of the man who killed my parents. I searched around his place but couldn't find him. I asked Aunt Susan who lived nearby, and she didn't know either. I sat at the doorstep. Just then, a man in a suit, driving an expensive car, stopped in front of me. I'd recognize this man anywhere. I stared intently at him. He seemed to notice me too and gave a nervous laugh. "Well, look at that. I just got out, and the creditor is already knocking." I said word by word, "Pay up." Gary Miller sighed. "You don't look like you're short on money. Anyway, I don't have any." I was so angry my eyes turned red. "Driving a car, wearing an expensive watch, and you say you don't have money?" Gary Miller said shamelessly, "Ah, my uncle helped me out. What's wrong? Can't I have that?" I wasn't after the money. I could earn that money back. I just felt the injustice for my parents, felt they weren't worth so little. Why could Gary Miller live comfortably while my parents were gone forever? He got out of the car, not wanting to deal with me, and was about to step inside his house, but I stubbornly blocked him, refusing to let him enter. Gary Miller clearly became impatient and was about to shove me, but the next second, a figure loomed over. Ethan blocked me. He was slightly out of breath, looking like he'd rushed over. Gary Miller was separated from me by Ethan. "Who are you?" Ethan said calmly, "I'm her husband. If you don't want to pay, then we don't need to negotiate privately. You can talk to my lawyer directly." I was stunned. Lawyer? Where did a lawyer come from? Just as I finished speaking, a slightly chubby man in a suit, carrying a briefcase, ran over from a distance, panting as he ran. "Oh my goodness, Dr. Walker, can you have some sympathy for me? I'm dragging 160 pounds of weight." I suddenly felt a bit unreliable about this, but less than half an hour after Ethan took Gary Miller and the chubby lawyer inside, we got good news. Gary Miller conceded and said he would pay me in installments, $25,000 per month. I agreed. To show his sincerity, Gary Miller, gritting his teeth, transferred $25,000 to me on the spot. I stared at the phone balance in a daze. My other hand hanging by my side was enveloped in warmth. It was Ethan's. He held my hand, his eyes full of heartache. "Why are you so silly? Why didn't you tell me sooner?" Feeling the warmth from his palm, this was the second time Ethan had initiated holding my hand. My emptiness was filled by him. But I stubbornly pulled away, just as he had pulled away from me back then. "I haven't agreed to get back together yet. Who said you could hold my hand?" Ethan looked up and gently touched my head. "Okay, then when will you agree?" I turned my head away, not looking at him, but a smile I felt was truly genuine appeared on my lips. "We'll see." The matter was successfully resolved. The three of us bought tickets back together, and life slowly got back on track. I vegged out for 2 days. Ethan was swamped at the hospital. After transferring, he was incredibly busy. One day, I was eating potato chips and binge-watching a show when a call came in. It was Ethan. Without thinking, I answered. "Hello?" A woman's voice came from the other end. Just as I was about to grit my teeth, the voice said, "Is this Riley Lou? Dr. Walker fainted at the hospital. Hurry and come see him." I froze, dropping the potato chips I had just picked up. I didn't even change my slippers. I ran straight to the state medical center and found the nurse who had called me. It was the same nurse who had given me the anesthesia. She gave me a look that said I understand and pointed towards the break room. "Dr. Walker is in there. You're his emergency contact, you know." My face flushed, but I didn't care about anything else and hurried inside. As soon as I stepped in, I saw Ethan drinking a cup of water with relish, his face rosy, looking nothing like someone who had fainted. Me? Ethan noticed me too and froze. He looked at me and said, "Why did you come out wearing slippers? They're so dirty." Me? Did you miss the point? I asked with a killing glare, "Didn't you faint?" Ethan coughed twice, then put down his cup. "Yes, I did faint just now. If I believed that, I'd be an idiot." I raged, "Liar." Then I turned to leave, but he grabbed my wrist. The force pulled me into his arms. "Not this again." I tried hard to push him away, but I couldn't. Instead, I felt his muscular chest. His chin rested on my shoulder, his tone a little pitiful. I really did faint. I'm off work. Will you take me home?" His scent and deep voice enveloped me completely, projecting an air that couldn't be refused. Something's up, but I still couldn't refuse. I ended up taking him home, and he even bought me a new pair of slippers along the way. Ethan said he lived in the hospital housing, and it was miles and miles away. He had to get up at 5 in the morning for work and sometimes couldn't even get breakfast. My heart ached, but I didn't say it. Ethan sat on the living room couch and suddenly said out of the blue, "Your place is close to the hospital." Me? Then, he looked at me intently. "I want to live with you." This time, the words of refusal on the tip of my tongue melted away under his serious gaze. Ethan and I got back together. He still had germophobia, but he no longer avoided me. I became the special one. I went back to the routine of changing slippers and showering as soon as I got home. But this time was different. After showering, I looked at Ethan sitting on the couch in a pair of silky pajamas, and my face turned red. Even his pajamas were neat and tidy, without a wrinkle. I felt an impulse and slowly walked over. I tentatively hooked my finger in his. This time, he didn't pull away, nor did he say, "Did you wash your hands?" Instead, he turned his wrist and completely enveloped my hand. His hand was long and beautiful. In that moment, I felt peace. I boldly snuggled into his embrace, willfully messing up his perfectly ironed pajamas. He raised his hand and held my mischievous hand. "Stop moving around." I clearly heard his breathing quicken. Ethan turned and stared at me, his gaze intense, predatory. I rubbed my nose and gave a playful smile. Well, a reserved heartthrob is easy to assault. So, boys need to protect themselves out there. Riley Lou. I looked up. The next moment, Ethan's kiss landed. His big hand held my waist, tightening and growing hotter. Then, I felt a slight pain on my lip. I frowned and opened my eyes, just in time to see Ethan's teasing gaze. "You bit me back then, so I have to bite you back this time." I couldn't help but laugh. Looks like Dr. Walker holds a grudge. Ethan held me and slowly said, "Take me to see my parents tomorrow." I looked at him confused, then he added, "We'll see my parents in the morning, and go visit your parents' memorial/grave in the afternoon. Heard getting married is simple, just a signature away. This time, do you still want to run?"